I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm happy to be joined by my buddy Christian. And as some of you have probably already watched our podcast about the French elections, well, now we're going to talk about the German elections with, well, someone from Germany. And well, I guess I'm practically from Germany at this point too, right? I mean, but Christian knows a little bit more about the political situation than I do. Has got his finger on it better, and that's why we wanted to kind of get people informed about what's happening, what exactly is going on with German politics, and then we'll get Christian's kind of his personal opinions about why he thinks we've gotten to this point and where he thinks we're going. I mean, hopefully, maybe, possibly, nobody really knows, but we'll talk about that as well. So we want to keep this kind of short so that people will actually watch it. We know that anyone sees us talking about German politics for an hour probably isn't going to watch, so we're going to try to keep it pretty short. So we'll try to be brief. So Christian, I'm going to send it right to you. Then, first of all, thank you for coming on. And what exactly happened over the weekend? I mean, I guess just if you can summarize it, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. To make it short, the AfD, like our right-wing party here in Germany. So the media will call it the right extreme party, but let's say right-wing party. They are the winner of the last weekend election for the European Parliament election. Here in Germany, they have now little more than 5% more than last time. And when you compare it to the German parties, which are at the moment the government parties here, so the red ones, so the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Liberals, the FDP, they lost, especially the Greens, they lost more than 8%, and it's kind of an earthquake here also in Germany. And there are lots of people who say now we need new elections, even for our national parliament now. Maybe we'll have it in a few months, maybe not, we will see. But the main thing is that for example, in other countries, France, for example, the right-wing party also here in Germany won this election. Yes.
And I saw a stat, or I suppose an image of the how do I call it? It's like a map of Germany, and it pretty much shows that the AfD is the number one party in the eastern states, and it's pretty interesting to see that it's literally every eastern state. So this image had a picture of the Berlin Wall, or the Berlin Wall. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much where the East and West Germany were divided, and everywhere that was East Germany is now voting for the AfD as their number one party, which is pretty interesting. And I know there are people who would disagree with this. Obviously, in Germany, it's a very hot topic, as politics typically is. But it's pretty interesting that this side of the country of Germany that used to be communist, literally, they were actually communist, they're part of the communist bloc, is now voting for the right-wing party. And so, Chris, I mean, I guess maybe we'll already get into that. Why do you think that is? Why are they the ones who have done it? Is it because they understand kind of what's going on, what the issues with socialism, I suppose?
Maybe a few words in general about this topic. Because for everyone who don't know, since we had just before the year 1990, between after Second World War and 1990, Germany was split into halves, like West and East Germany, and East Germany was like the communist part, very close connected to Russia, with no real democracy or something. So in the western part we had this, and it's indeed it's a very interesting fact that our right-wing party, the AfD, is for years now in the East Germany states, in the four East Germany states, is the strongest with the way strongest, so very strong, more than 30% or something. And maybe the reason behind that is maybe that the people in East Germany, there are lots of people who still living, and they had some experience with totalitarianism here in our communist system here in their life, so they know what that is. And so I also have to say that in German politics in general, especially in the last few years, especially like Corona was kind of a more or less starting point, but it was also bad before that. That our politicians, yeah, they are in general very left, very left, and also they have a very misunderstanding what democracy actually is, because they try to force the people to think like them, and especially the Greens and the Social Democrats and something, they force these like very left green, like with climate change or something, these agendas very strong in our in the politics and in the society in general. And for example, it started with Corona, that everyone who talks against or said something against the government or said something against like the line of the government was was immediately a Nazi or a bad person or a person with no mind or something. So they insulted them. So it is in Germany. People have to understand, in Germany, it's kind of very hard today to have free speech. So actually, so in our law, it's a right from us, also free speech, but in a way that's not true anymore, because every time when you say something against the government today, you are, it's very dangerous, because you can lose your job, you can lose your income, you can lose, some people even lose their homes or something. So it's very strong. And so the people in East Germany, they already have some experience with societies like that, like for example the DDR, the Soviet stuff. And so they know, okay, we need a change in our politics. And the only opposition party here, more or less in Germany, is the AfD, because even like the CDU, like the Christ Democrats here in Germany, they are more or less the same part, like these old parties. It's all the same, and there are no, and the only option when you want to, when the people have a feeling, and when you want to change something here in the country, you have to vote for the AfD. And so in this way, the the persons in East Germany, they are much, they know it much better. And also you have to know that like the people in West Germany, this reflects that when you call, when somebody called you here in Germany a Nazi, that's a very big thing here, because like this reflects in our minds are so strong that so you can destroy your opposite, your political enemy, just to say you're a Nazi, because the people, especially here in West Germany, they still believe that, especially old people. And when you look how the old people here in Germany vote, they vote just for the Social Democrats and for the CDU, for the Christ Democrats. So the old parties and just the old, but it's also a good hope for, in my eyes, that the younger people here in Germany vote now more right one, because they recognize, okay, we are in a very bad, we go into a very bad direction with mass immigration from Muslim countries, with our climate change pushed energy change or something, with wind, just with wind and solar power, with all the social stuff they force, for example, the gender agenda and something like gender mainstreaming and something like that. So and so the young people starting recognize here in the country that we need a change, and that's the reason why they also vote more for the AfD than in general.
And do you think, I mean, it's a really interesting thing that since I've been here 8 years now, and AfD was really pretty small when I first came, and it was very grassroots, kind of up and coming, and it's grown and grown and grown, and it really, since I've been here, it's been something that you don't talk about, you don't tell anyone that you're part of the AfD. But I think that might be changing. I mean, now that you see that in the EU elections, AfD was number 2. I think people need to, mostly Americans are probably watching this. It's not like, it's not a 2-party system. So you have many parties, I don't know how many, 7 or 8 parties. And so if you get, a 20% vote, it's actually quite big. 30 is very big, so that's something to keep in mind. And they got the number 2 percentage. And so Christian, I mean, what do you think? You're someone who could speak to this well. I mean, is it actually going to be a point where we can actually say, let's not even say positive things. Let's just say, can you actually talk about the AFD in public now and not be afraid of losing your job or something? Do you think that that's coming soon, or is it here? Maybe.
Let's say it depends, like where you are. For example, when you're more or less on the landscape, where also the AFD is much stronger, more than because on last election we got 15%, and on the landscape they're often like more than 20% or something. So when you're on the landscape side, so in a little village or something, it's possible to talk about also this topic, and also you also can say, okay, now I voted for them, and you don't have to fear about any pressure or something. But in our cities, for example, it's very more or less still impossible, because they are very left, and also it depends on where you work. For example, when you work for the state, for example, then you have to be still very careful, because I also did some experience with that. You can lose your job, or you can lose your income, because you are part of the wrong movement or something. And but in general, I will would agree with you that now we can talk about this topic, or we can say, okay, or people can say that they vote for the AFD more than a few years ago. But at the other hand, you also have to say, like, since a few years now, because of the mass migration and something, the AFD grew and grew and grew, and so the old parties, they got more and more hysteric, let's say like this. And so like, when you have just to look in our newspapers, the month before this election now, they they just talk and wrote so much rubbish and so much dirt about this party to make them smaller again. And they said, okay, when the AfD is in the government, for example, they will kick all non-Germans out of Germany, and everything will lose his house, non-German, and they all have to lose, and everyone who's not part of their mindset of how they look at the world, their ideology, they will kill them and something like that. So they spread fairy tales about that here, but it was very strong. And as you can see, like we had in January and February in big cities here in Germany, more or less all big cities, for example in Munich where I live, we had like these demonstration against so the right wing, and so more than 100,000 people came to this event. And so that's also so at one part you're right that it's be more and more normal to vote for AfD or be part of it, but at the other hand, we are not at this point still where we've done the job, because before we are just in a way, and you see the bad things and the counter what the other parties give to the AfD got stronger and stronger now, because they are afraid of that. So it's
yeah, no, it makes sense. And so before we get into what you think is going to happen, I mean, what you mentioned it already. I mean, I think the mass migration is a big part of it. I think it started with COVID, that people started to be like, okay, come on, something's wrong here. I think you started to see progress with the AfD in that case. And you've also seen things like, I saw that the Greens are pushing for 2036 to have no more combustion engines in Germany, so they're only electric cars in Germany. Everyone just think about that for a second. BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes, really, really the king of cars in many cases around the world. They're saying they want to get rid of cars. So Christian, do you think part of it is because the Greens and the socialists took over the government, and they're just so dumb that people are like, okay, we got to do whatever the opposite of this is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting, because sometimes I have the impression or the feeling that these Greens, because it's with no doubt these Greens, the Green Party. So you have to know, in last election, national election, they got 15%. But with these 15%, they are more or less now the rulers of our country, because they force and they give these impulses here in our in the politics, and what they want. the government do it, and it doesn't matter that there are two other parties in the government, because also the media is very green, and so they force it also. And but in a way, you're right, because like I think the Greens, mm, let's say, with no insulting, but many of
You
these,
can insult them.
they have no real idea what real life means, because many of these green politicians, they never had a real job. They never they didn't study. They had no they have no like they didn't learn any job. Yeah, they were just from school to the party, and then part of the party, inner society, and then from this to some parliaments, lower parliaments and higher parliaments. So they have no idea what the normal people thinks, and so they make politics with just a ton of ideology and no real life looking, right? And before they were on power or in the government, the people were very. Many people thought, okay, they are future because of climate change, and they talk about this very strong topic, and we have to talk about, and we have to change something, because otherwise in 20 years we will have no land anymore because it's burned or something. I don't know, but now they are on a government now for a few years now, 3 years now, and now the people recognize per by per, like a few times, step to step, that what it means when these Greens dummies are in the government, because like they forbid our heaters, they forbid our cars, because they have no car. The car, like producing cars, is the heart of our of our economy. Like that's what we are since 100 years, and to destroy this heart of our economy destroys more or less our whole economy, more or less. And so now the people starting getting the point that when the Greens really force their topics, then we lose our money, we lose our wealth, we lose our country, we lose our state, more or less. We lose everything what we have, what our parents and grandparents built. We destroy everything at the moment, and so that's. And so the people get that, but many people, that's also kind of a shame, because many people don't understand it the same way. Because when it's okay, now I'm don't voting for the Greens anymore because they're so bad, so I vote for the Christ Democrats, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the CDU is Angela Merkel's old party, for those of you who don't know. So it's really, they call it conservative, but it's certainly not. I mean, in terms of American politics, especially, it's very much left. I mean,
liberal,
I think even German liberal. Yeah, I mean, even in Germany, it's liberal. Even if they call themselves.
Yeah, because who decided to or who said okay, or decided Germany is not anymore, don't want to build any more new nuclear electricity factories or something, or just want to produce their electricity out of with wind and solar. That was the CDU before the Greens,
and allowed in all of the immigrants. I mean, that was Merkel. That was the CDU.
Who legalized the marriage for everyone, like the gay marriage. That was also the CDU. So the people who want conservative politics, they and that's humanity, or part of human beings, but also I sometimes have the impression that's part of the German mentality, that Germans have no idea how politics works, and so they forgot very fast. And so after 3 years, like, everything is forgotten, and now the CDU can say, oh, these bad Greens, these bad social democrats, they are bad for sure, but they say, oh, everything what's going wrong at our country, in our country, is just their fault. But even sometimes I have a feeling that even the CDU people, they forgot, before we had these 3 years now, Greens and Reds in the government, we had 16 years CDU in our government.
Yeah, so, exactly. It was Merkel during COVID. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I hope that people wake up to that. And I do think, as you mentioned before, or maybe that was on the French one, I don't know, but it's a generational thing. The older people are going to vote for the parties that they know. They're going to vote for Merkel or whoever they think is going to be the one that's safe and comfortable. But the younger people are figuring it out. They're starting to understand what's wrong with the world to a point, and then and they want to fix it, I think. And so that's why, again, you see that there is a move towards the right. And so I guess, Christian, I'll ask you that. I mean, we got to already kind of wrap it up here fairly soon, but what do you think is going to happen? I mean, so you mentioned that maybe they'll even vote for a new parliament. If you could guess right now, so the general elections, so the major elections will be next year most likely, but maybe sooner. What's your gut? What do you think happens? Do you think it goes mostly just back to the middle, back to the CDU?
Yeah, I have the fear, more or less, on the one way that for sure, like at least when we have to vote next time, that's next September or September in 2025, and so at this point, the government, the Greens will not be in the government anymore, at least for the next 4 years. But I'm not. My fear is that most of the people will vote for the CDU again, and then the CDU will have a coalition with the Social Democrats, or even with the Greens. We never know, and so we are on a bad way, and I have the fear that we will follow this bad way for several more years, because we are not at this point yet where the people have really recognized on which way we are. And so I have the fear that the people just will recognize where we are when it's more or less too late, or at least in this way too late, that we will have after it after the change, maybe when we have something like that, if we have something like that, we will have many years with suffering or something. So with bad economy and not so much money or something like that. And that's my fear. The other way, maybe it gives me hope. For example, that when you look, for example, at the circumstance, it's just a little joke at the side, because the Greens were they forced this topic, for example, that before the European election, that also because it's like you can vote when you are 18 at the moment here in Germany, and now the European election was the first election where also people are from the age of 16 can vote. And so that's was a big thing for the big plan for from the Greens to force this topic. And for the European election, they were successful because they thought, because in the many years before, like the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, the young people were way more left than the society in general, or the average person here in Germany. But now this election showed us that now for example, the elections before that, because they just had some surveys around under they asked some 16,000 of 16-year-old persons here in Germany what they want to vote when they could, the elections before, and the Greens were way better than in general in Germany, like over 25-30% or something, so very big. And so the Greens thought, okay, that's a good way to get more percentages. But now they lost more. From the last election, the 16-year-old people, they would have elect the Greens with 34%.
Mm-hmm.
But now they got just, I think, 11 or something. So they lose more than a half in this from by the youth, by the 16, 17, 18,
Interesting.
13. And the AFD is now with the AFD was voted in this election with 17% in these very from these very young persons, more than in average. So that's on the other side. I hope maybe that especially the young people, and when you, for example, look, the people who are younger than 40, they vote in average with 20-25% AFD. The reason why why the AFD had just 15% was because of the old people. Because, for example, like the old people more than 70 and older, they vote for 45% for CDU and 40% SPD and something, so Social Democrats. And so maybe that's also a generation conflict we have now, or we can see now. And at the other side, I will say, so I'm more pessimistic in this way, because I would say we are not at this point of change now. So we have to go this way a few more years, but at least good hope is that the right wing movement is also growing in Germany, and is not like a few years ago. Even I was thinking that that's never going to happen in Germany, because in Germany right is something very evil.
I told Ina that the AFD got second place, and she was like, "No, they didn't." Like, no,
Yeah.
they did. No, they didn't. Yeah, they did. That's really, but that was a very normal reaction, because it really is hard to believe here. And I think that's again, as you say, I think most solutions, no solutions in our world are going to be solved by politics. I think that it's going to be cultural change. It's going to be obviously religious change. It's going to be the change of people going back to God. And I think we both know that. But I think it is good to see that, the youth are figuring it out. There is a search for truth and tradition. And it's not like the AFD is perfect. Honestly, I don't like a lot of what they stand for or don't stand for. But again, it does show that I think people are, they're looking for something other than what we have right now, which is pure insanity. And I think that is a positive thing. And I think that's, and I think that we see it in our little chapel. We have like half of our parish, 70 people, which I know it's not huge, but like half are little children, like under 10. And so there is a future here. And I think that the younger people are getting more traditional. They're having more children. If we can get through this point in time, I think, and maybe it's going to be a really hard point, maybe in the next 5 years or so, there's going to be maybe war, maybe, starvation, who knows? I agree. I think it could get really bad. Maybe not. But I think if we get through that, I think the next generations have the chance, if they're not brainwashed with social media and phones and et cetera, I think that we have a chance to have a hopeful future. And I think that's important. I think it's important. We're recording a show tomorrow. I'm saying that now, but on Friday about patriotism and what the Catholic Church says about patriotism and loving your country, and patriotism being a virtue. And I think that's really important, that we need to remember that we should love our country. We should love, that doesn't mean we love our politicians or what they do. We love our country, what it should be. Our homeland is something that we should absolutely love and respect, and pray for, and maybe fight and die for. I mean, that really is potentially something we should be ready for. So Christian, any last words before we head out? We got to try to cut in before 30 minutes.
Yeah, like maybe a last thought from my side. Maybe we have maybe to talk about this topic in a few months again, because like in fall, in September, 3 of our East Germany states will have their state elections there. And as we already talked about, like in East Germany, AFD is place number 1, and they will be place number 1. Maybe we will have then after these elections, after these 3 elections, at least 1 or 2 AFD state ministers, so the heads of these states. And maybe that's even more, will be even more if we'll have if it happened. But when we will, or if we will see it, it would be or will be even a bigger earthquake in our politics life here. And so after these elections, maybe we can talk again, and maybe we will present a very different video.
Even more optimistic. No, sounds good. No, Christian, I appreciate you coming on. Definitely, you can always come on. We have a lot of stuff we could talk about. Maybe next time we'll talk about the differences of beer. We talked about that the other night, and it's pretty interesting actually. What the difference between wheat beer and normal beer? It's actually more fascinating than you'd think. And Christian, he's a historian, a politician, and a beer lover, which makes him a good friend of mine. Christian, thanks as always. Everyone, please like, share, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Let us know what you think about what's going on in Germany, in Europe. Do you think it's headed at least in the right direction? Do you think it's earthquake level big? Is it what do they call it, a right-wing tsunami, as I've heard people say it? Or do you think it's just a little, splash that's not going to go anywhere? Let us know what you think. And until next time, Christian, God bless you.